CSU Monterey. Good morning, everyone. My name is Luz Espanola, and I am with CSU Monterey Bay. Just to give you a little background, I was an instructional designer for the Center for Academic Technologies, and I recently landed a new position as the accessibility specialist for our campus. I am still with the same department, and alongside I work with my colleague, Cassandra.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Thanks, Liz. My name is Cassandra Eccles, and I'm the Accessible Technology Coordinator at CSU Monterey Bay. I also come from an instructional design background as well as faculty background. I still teach part-time, and my position on campus is to help us become more accessible across the board. So that includes course materials like we're going to talk about today, but also through procurement, new things that we're buying, acquiring, and using, and also our website. So our first question, what is digital accessibility? The University of Virginia has a really nice definition for us that I'd like to share with you today to just get some background. So digital accessibility is when technology has been designed in a way so that it can be accessed by all users. So this includes electronic documents, so Word documents, Google Docs, presentations, PDFs, websites, including content that you're hosting on your learning management system, and software, hardware, video, audio, and other digital assets that you might be using in your courses. And so now, why is it important in our courses? How does it relate to us? It relates in a few ways. So first, it is a CSU and a legal requirement, as I'm sure you've probably heard before, at least I hope so. Our Executive Order 1111 states that the CSU is required to make electronic and information technology accessible to all students, employees, and the general public. So including those individuals with disabilities. And that Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 says that agencies must give disabled employees and members of the public access to information comparable to the access available to others. Secondly, accessible digital materials are a big need for a lot of people. According to the CDC, 1 in 4 adults in the US has a disability. So that's a really meaningful portion of your course, whether you're aware of it, through formal accommodations or not. A lot of people can benefit from having accessible materials available to them. And finally, it's just good course design. It should be a part of your usual material and course development process. So now we'd like to play part of a video for you demonstrating how accessible and inaccessible materials on a website can affect a user who needs to rely on assistive technology. Lucy, if you wouldn't mind starting, thank you. Lisa, I'm not getting audio.
You're not hearing audio?
Nope.
Okay, let me stop share. Try this again. Here we go.
This is Mark Sutton from the University of California, San Francisco's IT Web Services Department. Here today with a brief tour of screen reading technology. I'm a blind person who has been using screen readers, braille writers, scanning equipment,
I'm not hearing it, but I can
since my
speak
childhood.
over.
What a screen reader does.
If you want, or we
Cassandra,
can move on if you'd like. I know we're a little behind.
We're all able to hear Cassandra, so I don't know if it might just be on your end.
We can hear it?
Yes.
Oh, it's not playing for me. I'm sorry. I'll let it continue.
I'm a blind person who has been using screen readers, braille writers, scanning equipment, other adaptive technologies since my childhood. What a screen reader does is, for example, I'm going to start to read this page.
Navigation 1. Link, University of California, San Francisco. Link, about UCSF. Link, search UCSF.
And what I will now do is slow down the speech rate.
Rate 80%, 75%, 70%, 65%, 60%, 55%, 50%, 45%, 40%. Link, UCSF Medical Center.
So as I was about to say, a screen reader converts what's on a computer screen into information that can be displayed through synthetic speech or Braille output. And it does that by allowing you to use a computer instead of a mouse, a computer keyboard instead of a mouse. You can also use a Braille display as an input device.
End of navigation.
And what it does is it cleverly determines what's on the screen and presents you that information in a way that would allow for efficient navigation of these pages. So for example, I could just keep reading.
Banner 3 items. Visited, link, image, home.
Line by line, and we could be here all day. Or I could jump to the first heading on the page.
Heading level 2, search for heading level 2. You are here. Heading level 1, make videos accessible.
So as I'm moving down through the page, I can look for the category that interests me. And I'm just using commands built into the screen reader. So that's all a pretty simple description of what a screen reader is all about. Now I'm going to go over and show a few examples of how that can fall apart. So I have a couple graphics on this page.
Mark Sutton hands on a MacBook Pro image.
So the first one is well described and uses an alt tag.
You are currently on it.
To describe what that graphic is all about. Now we go to the next graphic.
Reader 042116.jpg.
Much less useful. So it's important to use those elements. It's also true for tables. So I'm going to move to a table.
FDA approved medications. Table, 3 columns, 5 rows. FDA approved medications.
So the table is pretty self-explanatory, and I'm going to move into the table.
Medicine. Approved. Column 2 of 3.
And then if I go down into the table.
Medicine. Tolbutamide.
And as I move across.
Approved. 1975. Column 2 of 3.
We're getting the labels for the column headers and row headers. So it's important when programming tables, forms, and other elements on the web pages to use the proper HTML codes. I'll go to the
table 3 columns.
Second table on the page.
Medicine. Row 2 of 5 tolbutamide.
And as I'm in the table, I move across it.
Row November 1995.
I get a date, but I don't know what that date is associated with. So it's important, as I was saying, to include proper coding tags for all these elements. These are just a few highlights of a screen reader's capabilities and some of the ways in which the experience can fall short for a blind user. The life of students, faculty, staff, and visitors is largely conducted on the internet nowadays. Screen reading technologies can make many of these interactions work more smoothly. When developers pay attention to certain coding standards, blind persons are able to participate in digital communication, being able to do such things as understand calendars and schedules, enroll in or teach classes, conduct research, and many more essential activities that are conducted electronically. If developers of web pages and applications fail to take into account these design considerations, many people will be left out, unable to use these tools of daily life that are now taken for granted by most of us. The university provides a gateway to many key aspects of social participation. It's imperative that access to university offerings is not jeopardized. For more information, go to digitalaccess.ucsf.edu. Thank you.
All right, so hopefully that gives you a bit of a foundation before we get into some of the specific things that you can do with your course materials. I'm going to go ahead and pass it off.
Okay. All right, everyone. So thanks for being here.
This is Mark Sutton from the University of California.
I am not Mark Sutton. I am Luce, and thanks again for being here. I'm going to go ahead and move to the next slide. Before I delve into this information that we're going to share with you today, we did want to mention that we facilitated a training a few weeks ago on this topic, and we're really excited to give you this overview today. These are some of the techniques that we shared with our faculty and staff on how to improve their digital content. And something that I want to mention is, this is really important right now, especially with this move that we've made to now teaching online. And so, we've talked about, before COVID, we talked about equity in the classroom and what does that look like? Well, now we have to consider what does equity look like in the digital world? And so the techniques that we're going to share with you today are going to give you bits of information of what you can do to create an accessible course on different platforms. So let me move to the next slide.
And Luz, as you do that, some folks in the chat have noted that they're not able to read all of your slide because there seems to be a Zoom window blocking some of the text.
Oh, really? Okay. Cassandra, are you able to share now? I think it's going to be easier if you can share the slides while I speak.
Sure. I'm ready when you are.
Go ahead. And if we can move to the previous slide, please. Okay. Okay, great. All right, so we just experienced that with that video, we've just experienced how a screen reader is used to navigate digital content. And so now we're going to walk through 7 accessibility techniques you can use to improve your course content. You can apply these techniques when you're working with platforms such as Google Docs, Slides, Sheets, as well as Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, and Excel. You can also apply these when you're building on the web and in a learning management system like Canvas. So let's start with the first 3 on this list. And the reason for that is because they help us create structure and allow students who use screen readers to navigate your content. And those 3 are headings, list, and table headers. So let's start with headings. So you can start by applying heading styles to your content. And, when you create, when you're creating headings in a document and you just make them bold and you make them big, that does not make them accessible. You have to use the built-in format settings that are in the platform that you're using to tag them as a heading. And so it's important to do this as well as to place them in a sequential order. And so there is a hierarchy that headings should follow. And so what you see on the slide is an example of an appropriate structure to give to headings. So heading 1 is reserved for the document title. Heading 2 is reserved for a chapter title, and heading 3 is reserved for subsections of a chapter. And so this is just an example of how you can apply these headings when you're building digital content. And when you're working with headings, you also want to make sure not to skip heading levels. And this is because heading levels give screen readers the structure to search your digital content. So if you skip a heading level, this will confuse them and they will try to find that missing level. And if possible, also limit your headings to 4 or 5, just because this may be cumbersome for your screen reader users to navigate through. Now, another technique that you can use is also using the built-in tool list, the built-in list tool. When you do this can help your students understand what groups of texts belong in a list and how they should interact with it. So for example, there are numbered lists live in a sequential order, while bulleted lists do not have a specific order. And so on the example on our slide, we have two lists. And on the first list, I can identify robot models that have no sequential order, versus the second list, which is the transport by order availability. So the second list tells me that hover buses are the first available option for transportation, while transport tubes are the least available. So using a screen reader, understanding this list helps me decide, maybe I need to run to go catch that hover bus because it's that first one, right, that's available. So another technique that you can use is making sure that you are defining your header columns, header rows, or maybe both in your tables. So designating headers in a table is essential for screen reader users to understand how the information is laid out. And just like headers in a document, table headers provide the direction and an overview of the content that lives in that table. Additionally, table captions, you'll want to add table captions because they describe the context and give a general understanding of what the table is. And again, this helps screen readers properly interpret tables when they have the proper structure. Images. So keep in mind that you will have students who have visual impairments. And so you can help them get an equivalent experience with your images by providing an alternative text, also known as alt text. Descriptions also make it easier for students to connect the image with the context. They also provide, can provide brief and descriptions should be brief and convey the full meaning of the image. Doing this will help users understand what the picture's significance or maybe lack of is with a screen reader. And before applying alt text, you will want to determine whether the image requires it or if it should be marked as decorative. Decorative images usually don't need alternative text. They may exist on a page purely for aesthetic reasons, or they may be repeating information that is already on the page. So in that case, repeating it with alt text would be redundant. Informative images, on the other hand, do convey information. And to determine whether an image is informative or not, remove it from the design. And if it is missing information because the image is gone, then it means the image is informative and it does need alt text.
So Luz, since we've reached the end of this time block, I'm wondering if there's any way to share like the most important takeaways from any remaining slides, and making sure that we put the link in the chat again for people to be able to review what you and Cassandra have put together.
Yeah, totally. And here is I just put in the chat our presentation, so you can go back and review. Our presentation also includes all the speaker notes, so you can go back and pick up on where we left off, and you can read for yourself what I would have said in this presentation. And let's see, what you can take away. Let's see, if we go through making links descriptive, there are some examples of what you want to do and what you want to avoid. Use high color, the next slide, please. Here are examples of high contrast color combos and what you want to avoid. And adding captions to your videos. I think if anything, definitely, now more than ever, we're using media like podcasts and videos. And so make sure that you do add captions to your videos, or if you find videos that you're using on YouTube and they don't have captions, we highly, highly recommend that you find an alternative that does. And if you're using podcasts, make sure that you are using transcripts with those audio files, just because you want to make it equitable to those students who may not be able to hear those audio files. Cassandra, do you want to finish this out for us?
Sure. So a couple of parting recommendations. We encourage you to go back and take a look at your courses, spot check your materials, see if you're following these best practices. And if not, try to make some improvements before next semester. And then secondly, we encourage you to research your campus's accessibility team to see where you can go if you have questions or need help in making your course more accessible. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you both. This is really important and useful information. And I think you've put it together in a way that makes it easy to adopt these practices. So thank you. And I am going to stop the recording